long time, a few followers, if you see this, one of the things we need to work on right now is when we see someone who doesn't have anything impressive going on for them, when we see someone who is struggling in any kind of way, we must, as a general rule, as whatever society you're part of, create an ideal that the responsibility is on us to help them. Meaning, when someone's having an issue, we don't draw the conclusion that their problems are worthless. We don't draw the conclusion that someone else will take care of them. Or drawing the conclusion that eventually they will grow. Because the assumption of they will eventually grow assumes that there's a linear course of development for everyone and a linear course of how progress takes place for people's lives. It also assumes that progress is a linear concept, and it generally assumes that monetary success is inevitable. It's that attitude that kind of excuses the lack of guilt, the lack of a sense of responsibility. Meaning we can't just say our responsibility is to our community, our responsibility is to our religion, our responsibility is to collective populations. Rather, the responsibility is on everyone equally. Meaning there is no person that's different. Like what comes to mind is a helicopter over my head. That helicopter is very busy. It makes perfect sense. They're going to where they need to get to. And they need to focus on their responsibilities, whether it's an anchor, whether it's an army, whether it's a private helicopter situation. You have preoccupation. What I'm saying is that the collective responsibility notion needs to be so ingrained into society that even the most radical decisions, even the most radical missions should already be conceived of as someone else will take over in case someone else on the ground needs help, even if it's not realistic. Meaning we're so focused on structure and plausibility for the sake of a rigid society, a rigid dynamic, that we're not crazy enough to develop a flexible dynamic for society at large. I'm not saying it's possible or reasonable, but I'm saying the only reason why it's not reasonable is because we're constantly idealizing the current framework at hand that says designation is everything. Your perception of how you are and what you're good at is everything. What degree did you get? What identity do you have? What is your community? How does your community perceive you? That gets way too emphasized. I'm not saying that the helicopter should stop short and say, this guy's making a video, let's have some fun with him. Let's make it impressive for him to live his life. Because I admit, that's somewhat self-absorbed to think that way. But the only reason why we think it's self-absorbed is because we don't see each other as ourselves. We don't see each other like we're family, like we're the firstborn. If everyone was the firstborn in the family, well, of course, it's an outdated way of viewing it, but if everyone was the only child of their family, and we're all cousins, if you had that understanding that each of us are related, like really, not just like metaphorically or distant relatives, yeah, well, I have a bunch of cousins, but you felt that they were almost like your husband or wife, then no one would be ignored. No one's problem, no one would be bored. No one would go day in and day out with just continuous repetition, no matter how mundane the life is. Like if someone has a gambling problem and they made a few thousand and they say, let me keep going, and they, instead of walking away, they put down 3,000, they lost it all, right? In an ideal society, there's so much love for the kid or the person that just wanted to make it, and he was overly enthusiastic momentarily, that there's people on demand willing to bail him out. And there's so many excuses in the mind. Well, every person has to take care of themselves. He has to deal with his own gambling addictions. That's what everyone else is doing. They're going to all these group therapy sessions to deal with all types of addictions: alcohol, gambling, you name it. Scrolling on Instagram, TikTok, whatever. What I say is that attitude is coming from the very system that ignores each other, that sees the other person as not only not themselves, but sees them as irrelevant in light of the fact that I live my life. I'm a taxi cab driver. Wherever I go matters. Doesn't matter that the guy next to me is making a video and interrupts. So that selfishness wouldn't exist if the entire society had a shift in paradigm. And this shift needs to happen from bottom up, obviously. But the real question is, how do you get people to recognize that it's an unideal system for everyone to be living their own individual lives without this sense that every single person is another limb or another skin cell or another organ of this working system? meaning no matter how trivial or small or large their problems, they're all treated equally. Now, obviously, prioritization is never going to go away. It's the only way human beings can structure things. But there's limits to our own ability to conceive of the inherent equalness of everything, simply because we're built upon creating hierarchical categorizations for everything, because that's part of structure. Because part of the big mind in psychological development is that you recognize that everything has its place. So you start coining things and naming things and getting them broken down according to how they function, and it makes it easier on everyone. But in so doing, you completely dismiss the equality facet to every little thing and the importance of each person's individual needs, because you've mundanified their existence. You've taken away the soul of the person. So, it's this idealistic world where a helicopter who's busy visiting the president comes out of the sky to say hello to some random person. Maybe economically it's not feasible. It sounds almost idiocratic, like idiocracy, right? It's not reasonable. But what I'm saying is that is only not reasonable because we built a society with assumptions on how things should work. What does a society look like when everyone is treated the same, where everyone is treated with equal importance? We should start envisioning that. Because when that paradigm shift happens, who knows when or how, it will be extraordinary. It'll be something different. That counteracts the inherent and constant selfishness that we're always forced into living as. Now, there's a higher way. The question is, how does that higher way manifest? Each person is going to say, the higher way is when it feeds my own beliefs. It feeds my own, way of having gotten successful. So you're projecting out your own current framework appreciation for the ideal of society. So you're basically projecting something that's not reasonable and not ideal and convincing people it's evolved, because that's most of society. So you really have to think outside the box. What would society look like if every person was the same with minimal differences in perception? What you would have is this fundamental love and desire to make sure that no one is sad, that no one is truly left out of that one conglomerate that we call the human species. It's worth pondering. It's not just an ideal, it's a truth. The question is, when will we manifest that truth in implementation, in actuality, to match what's actually happening, and not just considering it philosophy and utopias.